What's up, y'all? Welcome to an episode of the Art to Heart podcast. My name is David Morin. I am a former Peace Corps volunteer and sales professional turned poet, death doula, and prison rehabilitation facilitator. Today's episode is something I'm very excited about. The last 3 years have been quite the roller coaster since leaving my job in 2022, and I feel like I'm finally finding my footing. I've been on the ride and adventure of a lifetime, and I've learned so much, and now I am here to start spreading what I've been learning, because it's been some of the most life-changing years of my life. And so as many of you know, if you follow me on social media, that in 2023, I did this experiment called A Year to Live, and it was part of my unofficial death doula training that I gave myself. I just kind of wanted to have some kind of breadcrumb of understanding, a fraction of an understanding of what it is like for someone to be facing an impending death date. You know, if you're sick and the doctors say you have 6 months, obviously there's stories of miraculous healing, but sometimes our time is up anyway. And so what is it like to be having that timeline kind of ticking down, that countdown ticking down? This is a formal announcement of my first business offering, inspired by the book A Year to Live by Stephen Levine. If we've been friends and I've spoken to you in person any time in the last 2 years, I have most definitely brought this book up, probably. So I'm leading a small group of people starting Wednesday, February 5th, for a year-long life experiment based on this question or scenario, which is, what would you do if you only had 1 year left to live? What would you do if you only had 1 year left to live? That's what I'm going to talk about today. Let that sink in. Notice what came up. Were you scared? If you were like me, I was freaking the hell out when I started taking this class, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So I'm going to talk about this offering. I'm going to explain what the Year to Live is in the eyes of the book, what my experience was taking this class, what I've learned. And also in the last couple of years, since really diving into this world of death care and what it means to be a death doula, how our relationship to mortality is really influencing our culture in ways many of us have not noticed. And so really, I want to settle into this idea of how mortality and death can be a teacher. In many ways today, we see it as a threat. We see it as the enemy. We see it as something to avoid, something not to talk about. It's only in a very negative connotation what we know with death, especially with all the violence that we're exposed to. So I kind of want to pick this apart a little bit. A Year to Live is a book by Stephen Levine, and this group is based on this book. He was a poet, an author. He was a meditation teacher who accompanied countless people on their deathbeds for their final transition. And he found that most of the people he worked with who had received a terminal diagnosis, whether it was 6 months, whether it was a year, whether it was 2 years left to live, almost everyone saw it as a second chance at life. They turned this bad news into an opportunity. They're like, oh shit, I'm going to die. What have I been waiting to live on? So some wanted marriage, some wanted divorce, some wanted to end their marriage, some wanted adventure and traveling, and some people just wanted to learn an instrument. Someone wanted to build their dream house or tear their house down, So after working with so many people, Stephen Levine decided to build a relationship with his own death, his own mortality, giving himself a pretend death date and living as if he had 1 year left on earth. And this book is what he wrote after the experience. So here's a quote from the book that I want to read. It's on the back cover of the book. Most of us go to extraordinary lengths to ignore, laugh off, or deny the fact that we are going to die. But preparing for death is one of the most rational and rewarding acts of a lifetime. It is an exercise that gives us the opportunity to deal with unfinished business and enter into a new and vibrant relationship with life. So this book itself, the book will be a companion for this year to live, which I'll be leading. We'll be reading the book, and there's a lot of meditations. There's a lot of some journal reflections that I'll be adding, but we'll be using the book as a light accompaniment. This book itself provides a lot of practical tools and profound meditations to help with this work, and this will be supplemented by lessons and reflections of my own. I've spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of procrastination to creating a really helpful map and flow of this experiment that I really wish I would have when I took this on. And I'll talk more about that later in this episode, but I've got something I'm extremely proud of, something I've put a lot of thought in, and I think I found the really right balance between infusing some of my own direction while honoring this source material that is already perfect on its own. So, why me? Why would you trust me for something like this experience? So, kind of during COVID in 2021, I was just stuck in my sales job and it wasn't important to me anymore. And I was battling so much resentment towards people in my life, towards family. I was battling so many addictions. Really, I was stuck in a lot of grief. And everything really took a turn for me when I remember it was July Independence Day 2021. It was during July 4th. I was in a 3-day darkness meditation retreat in Oaxaca, Mexico. And that is where I discovered I was a poet. It was one of the most powerful experiences of my life. I'll probably dedicate a separate episode, even though it's been a few years ago. It's still been a profound teacher for me even now. And so a few months after that darkness retreat, my grandpa was passing away. It was during Thanksgiving later that year, and I was accompanying him in hospice through his last days. It was just a lot of my natural instincts kind of kicked in, and that was new for me, but I just knew, I was like, Grandpa's not going to stay there alone. I have to go keep him company. And so me and my dad and brother kept him company, but I was the last one to see him. And it wasn't until later on that I realized, that was my calling for a death doula, to be a death doula. I was naturally tending to his needs and his comfort and playing him music and just trying to communicate with him and let him know I was there for him, even when he couldn't talk. I didn't even know if he was conscious, but throughout that, and even in the following year after that, I was writing poetry like a maniac, writing over 1,000 pieces, and was a bit dramatic about it because I felt like if I wasn't going to write, I'd rather die. So I guess I went full poet and I was like, kill me or let me write poems. But it had really come down to this point at my job where I was like, I really don't like this job. And it's taking me away from what I love doing the most, and that was poetry. And I think that's really spoke more to how much of a dark place I was coming out of, that I just needed the light. I was so desperate for it. Like Gollum to the ring, that was me to poetry. Nothing else mattered. So I did the darkness meditation retreat. July 2021, a year later in May, I quit my job, and the next 18 months was this fun employment roller coaster, traveling all over the world, following poetry, following my muse, going to Morocco and Europe and Guatemala, and visiting the monarch butterflies in Mexico, which is what my book will be about when it's done. So during this 18 months is when I settled in and found this class called A Year to Live. And that's when I was really settling more and more into this death doula role. Instead of more so just focusing on being a poet and expressing myself, I really wanted to know, I was like, what is this death doula thing? I feel like it really had a hold on my heart. So I was like, let's check this out. And that's when I found A Year to Live, which was offered by this incredible woman named Wilco Roig. She is a teacher, a death doula, a transpersonal psychologist, and the director of the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation in Mexico. And I originally signed up for one reason, like I said before, but I wanted to find some way to be able to relate more to future death doula clients. I just wanted to have a crumb of understanding of what they might be going through, facing an actual impending death date. So this class officially started in January 2023, and I was losing my mind. I couldn't open up the book, and I couldn't open up the online module. I think I missed the first month class because I was like, no, I didn't read, I can't attend. And I was just here in this like kind of anxious state. And it wasn't until March 7th, 2023, that I finally had the courage to open up the module, and then boom, the first instructions were loud and clear. Welcome to a year to live. 1 year from today will be your death date. Write it down now. And so I was like, shit, no going back. Game on. March 7th, 2024 is my death date. Let's go. And it turned out to be one of the most incredible years of my life by far. And so there's essentially two main things I want to share with you throughout this death date well, three. The first one is that, yeah, I was anxious for a few months. I will address that. That was mostly my own fear, but I think at one point and this might be a concern of yours, this is why I'm bringing it up right now, but at one point I legitimately thought, holy shit, I'm going to die on March 7th. I am attracting my death date. I'm really going to die. This is really it. I'm fucked. And what I learned, and what I'll share with you to hopefully save some of that anxiety for you, is that what I really found is that universe, God, life, it responds to your intention. And my intention was to use mortality as a way to live more deeply. I didn't actually want my life to end. I was prepared for my life to end, but I didn't want it to. And so I think that was a huge lesson I learned that I want to run home to anyone who's thinking, oh no, I don't want to attract my death like law of attraction, you know. But the fact of the matter is you won't attract your death, just like someone thinking about sex won't get them pregnant. Okay. So that's out of the way. But other than that, two main things I want to share is I realized that the two biggest things that were important to me during this last year to live was service, you know, giving, service, trying to find a way to give back, and my family. I had spent so much time away from my family. I think I realized before last year I had been gone for the previous 10 birthdays. And I was like, damn, that's a long time. Let me hang out with family. So I got a bunch of family time in. And during this year, I met a friend at a conference who was a former lifer in prison. And he still goes back to volunteer at the group he paroled from at one of the prisons. And I went and shared some poetry and loved it, kept going back. And I was trying to volunteer with as many orgs as I could because I just fell in love with the space so much. And one of the guys in this class, he was like, hey, have you heard of this company called Defy Ventures? I'm taking a class by them. You would be a very great facilitator for them. So checked it out. Turned out they were hiring part-time. Got the part-time job. First day I was hired, the supervisor who hired me quit. So I was like, oh shit, did I make the wrong decision? Obviously I didn't. I love this job. But because that person quit, they opened up room in the budget to bring me on full-time. And so just like that, I had a full-time job fall into my lap that didn't really exist a couple weeks prior. And so that was like the really first big lesson. I was like, holy shit. Because before that happened, I realized that I was running out of money. And I was like, oh, I can't keep volunteering. Like, I love this, but I can't keep volunteering. I need some freaking money. You know, I'm running out of savings, and I got to start making my income again. And so that's when I made a deal with life. And I said, look, if you find a way to pay me for this work, I will give every last day until my death date to these men. And obviously in my head, I meant until March 7th, 2024. This was probably like September, October, November. And I was like, give me a job and I'll dedicate every last day to these guys. And then I got a job. And so I was like, all right, I'm on the hook until March 7th. And I'm still here. And it's just been an incredible experience. I've learned so much about my own humanity. And a lot of what I've learned throughout this year of going to prison 3 days a week. I'm in a maximum security facility teaching business, entrepreneurship, emotional intelligence, and just giving men a chance at redemption and tools to at least aid in their rehabilitation. And I now go 4 days a week one of those days I'm teaching poetry. And so it's incredible. So service was a really big thing I wanted out of my year to live. And I got it and then some. And now I'm here landing on this new service with this year to live. The other thing that I really wanted to work on is my family dynamics, like I mentioned. I had shunned my family out for quite a while, and I was tired of doing that. I think I was in a healing phase. I think every healing journey has a point where you're anger. You become aware of a lot of things, and it's a natural step. But sometimes it's easy to get stuck in anger, and I was stuck in anger. And most of that was because I didn't want to take ownership of my habits and decisions. I just wanted to blame them on generational trauma. And so what the year to live really taught me is it just hit me one day. It was like, dude, you don't have the time to wait for your parents to heal, to love them the way you've been wanting to. You don't have time. They are not going to do all of this work you want them to before March. So you either got to suck it up and love them as they are now, or keep being a punk about it. And I was like, whew, all right. Let me love them just as they are today. And that's when the healing started. Like I said, my death date was March 2024. By the end of the year, I had most of my family in family therapy sessions together. Everyone except a brother out of state. But including my parents who have been divorced for like 15 years. And so I was like, holy shit, this is crazy. And this all just started with living with my mortality in mind, of just knowing that like, hey, I'm dying in a year. I'm dying in a year. And so slowly this mentality became a teacher. And now it's a way of life. And if you know anyone who's done psychedelics, if you know anyone who's done a medicine journey, almost every time when someone says they had the most profound experience, at least for the friends in my life who have done it, almost every time the profound experience usually correlates with mimicking some kind of death. Like, oh, I saw myself die. I felt myself die and come back. And so with this, the year to live it's essentially like a microdose. Just like a little microdose every day. Hey, just remember I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And it just helps put your decisions. Imagine every decision you made, and you don't have to do this. Imagine if a friend calls you and says, hey, do you want to go out to dinner? Before answering, just ask yourself in your head, oh shit, if I'm dying in the end of the year, is this someone I want to spend more time with? Or no? Am I going to regret going? It really empowers you. It empowered me to stop people pleasing. So this next part is going to be based on the lessons that I've learned and how I've really integrated these lessons in the last couple of years. And I've really come to the conclusion that this is the most important work that we can do for ourselves and for the world right now. And I know that sounds dramatic, but hear me out. And before I go any further, like for this year to live, you can just listen to this episode, take what I say, buy the book, and you're going to have an incredible time doing this on your own. I promise you, you'll have such an impactful experience if you were to just do this on your own. And I wish you would if that's what you want. But if you would like to have a group of people to explore this with, to bounce off some powerful insights and reflections with, and have a community of people to go on this journey with together, then consider signing up for the group. All right. So like I said, this next section, I'm going to get a little bit more into my lessons and dive into some of the more existential layers of mortality and its influence on society and culture as I've observed it. It's meant to be a broader philosophical context of my approach to this topic, and you'll see why this is why I believe this is the most important inner work that humans can do for humanity and the planet right now. So, what I've learned is that our mortality can be the greatest teacher that we can ever have in our life, but it's a class that no one's really willing to take. And so this is the class. If you join, welcome. It's not a stretch to claim that the human species has never been as far removed from death and its unbiased wisdom as we are today. We live in an age of overwhelming outrage over injustice, over untimely death, over suffering. And while much of this outrage is valid and deserves our attention, it's worth asking, how much of this is also tangled with our fear of death itself? How much of our outrage over injustice and untimely death is tangled up with our fear of death itself? So think of this outrage like a glacier. Our outrage of injustice is the visible tip of the glacier that we see above the surface. What we focus on, grief, anger, injustice, this all rises from the surface. But under the surface lies something far more menacing, and that's our collective denial of our mortality. It's this massive, unseen weight that shapes so much of our fear, avoidance, and despair without even knowing it. Yet, we rarely dive beneath the surface to examine it. When someone dies unjustly or too soon, we rage loudly. We question, why this? Why them? Why is no one stopping this? Why is no one watching this? But rarely do we sit with the root of our anger or grief. I'm not saying that these deaths don't matter. I'm asking, is it injustice alone that fuels our outrage? Or is it the chilling reminder of our own impermanence that has us kicking and screaming on autopilot? I don't know this answer for sure. But I know that the more we demand answers, the less time and energy we spend contemplating these questions. And without these necessary conversations with ourselves, with each other, with the people we love, how can we help humanity break free from this cycle of trauma and violence that haunts our species as a whole? Now, I know that's deep. That's why I give context on the angle of which I'm approaching this work. This mortality work is really healing for the planet. This distinction of our outrage matters. Where we direct our collective energy and intention matters. We often put these two in the same boat simply because it's easier to. But there is an ocean of nuance here that we are spiritually incapable of dipping our toes in as a society, preferring instead the raging waters of our fear. In a world that refuses to acknowledge mortality, it's easy to blur the lines between our fight against injustice and our fight against death itself. They are not the same. If we can untangle them, mortality becomes less a fuel of fear and more a teacher, offering us perspective, presence, and clarity. Our ancestors understood this better than we do now. For them, death was a part of life, witnessed, honored, and faced head-on. People died at home, surrounded by loved ones, and their passing was marked by collective communal mourning, while the corpse rested in the home for days. Even I've heard of cultures, I think this was Turkey, I could be wrong, but that when someone died, the whole community, the whole family, the whole extended family, and the community would get together and cook for the grieving, for the mourning family. And they would cook for them for weeks and months, and so they didn't have to do anything. It's like, just stay and grieve and be sad. We will take care of you. We will feed you, nourish your spirit. And today, death is hidden away in hospitals, abandoned in nursing homes, sanitized, ignored, seldom seen, and halfway grieved. We've even changed our language to soften the blow. Unalive feels safer to say than dead. This denial of our mortality isn't just about avoiding sadness or despair. It reflects a deep, deep disconnection from life itself. Yet the more we push death away, the more we rob ourselves of the chance to live fully. This, of course, is often felt but rarely acknowledged in ways we crave. We lack the language and courage most days. But I am a poet, and there's always hope. We can reclaim the wisdom of our mortality, not as a teacher of despair, but as one of depth and perspective. We get to dive beneath the surface of the glacier to cut through the noise and reconnect with what truly matters. In doing so, we transform our fear into purpose, our hesitation into urgency, and disconnection into presence. By cultivating this intimacy with mortality, we remove the blanket of a false comfort that we are guaranteed to make it 80 or 90 years. And we feel the chill of contemplation of having 1 year left to breathe. Reunite with the part of yourself that has been long lost. At the end, when our body weakens and the muscles can no longer give, our only choice will be to retreat into our inner home before the long sleep. By softening the bed now, we sink more comfortably into life's unknown so we can live with more intention, more clarity, and urgency than ever before. So join me in a small group of light-hearted seekers in a year-long deep dive into mortality and uncover new depths of what it means to come alive. Here's what's included in this program. We are going to have 13 monthly calls. Normally, this would only go 12 months. I'm going to add that last month at the end, just so we can kind of reconvene after the death date. But this starts February 5th, 2025, which means that our operating death date will be February 5th, 2026. Of course, if another date calls out to you, you're more than welcome to follow that. So we'll be meeting once a month, the first Wednesday of every month. And these will be 90-minute calls. In addition, you'll get 3 60-minute one-on-one calls with me throughout the year. For additional guidance and reflection, I will be recording some of the meditations and providing those on audio for you so you don't have to read while you meditate. I'll be providing a safe container to explore these difficult topics. We'll have a WhatsApp group chat for ongoing discussion and updates. I will provide you with forms and resources to complete an advance directive and living will. I am not an attorney and I'm not giving legal advice, just providing resources to help you make your decisions. And it would be your duty to consult with an attorney if you want to make any of these things official and want legal counsel. There may be an in-person retreat at the end of the program. Maybe that could be the 13th month. This would be optional and decided upon group interest. Just know that the retreat is not included in the core fee, and this would be a co-creation explored later in the course. And so here are some topics you can expect to go over. The value of a 1-year commitment to death-conscious living, embracing the unknown and your fear of fear itself, learning about the natural ancient process of earth that is death, life, and rebirth. You'll have a chance to go over any regrets, any unfinished business, guilt, or shame. And these will not be required to share publicly. This will all be inner personal work. Inner, not inter, but inner personal work. We'll have some fear revealing and fear reducing meditations, mindfulness techniques, and a dying meditation practice. There will be a life review practice. And a quick tangent on life review. I have heard and read from many people in the death world, but it's pretty widely known that before someone dies, everyone has a chance to do a life review. It may be a moment in our time-space reality, but for them, it's as long as it needs to be, and they review all of their life. And so I had a car accident last year, and I talked about that in a previous post, but I experienced that. Right before the collision, time stopped, and I had time to just sit there and think about my life, and it was freaking crazy. So don't wait till the end of your life to do it. You can start reviewing your life right now. We'll be going over what I call the spectrum of grief. We'll be going over integrating and our intuition, love and compassion, forgiveness and gratitude, the impermanence of the flesh, and any legacy work, anything you want to leave behind. And so again, this starts February 5th. Feel free to reach out on Instagram, email, LinkedIn, WhatsApp. I'll have all this on the website if you want to reach out. And so this next part, now I'm going to get into the frequently asked questions. And I'm going to say what these questions are first. That way, if there's any question you're thinking of, you can stick around. But just know this isn't your typical frequently asked questions. I've sprinkled in a lot of specific experiences and lessons in these questions. Take it with a grain of salt. If you join or if you do this on your own, this process will be personal to you. So, like I said, take what I say with a grain of salt. And so here are the questions I'll be exploring right now. Who is A Year to Live for? How long is the course? When and how often do we meet? What kind of commitment will be expected? Will there be homework? How serious do I need to take this experiment? How might I feel after completing A Year to Live? What is the curriculum? Will we meet in person for a closing out ceremony? Will focusing on mortality increase my chances of dying? How do I sign up? Some of those I've touched on, but let's go. Who is A Year to Live for? If you're ready to embrace the full spectrum of the human experience, to confront your mortality and live with greater urgency and intention, A Year to Live is for you. If you're in the midst of a life transition or you want to be in a life transition but don't know where to start, A Year to Live is for you. If you're overwhelmed with life and you feel like your anger, your grief, everything is just dialed up to 100, A Year to Live is for you. This program is for everyone and can meet anyone where they're at. However, I have designed this program for individuals who are driven, growth-oriented professionals, someone who's curious about mortality, someone seeking a life and change, someone seeking a change in life but not sure where to start, someone seeking personal transformation, someone curious to get your feet wet for a deeper sense of spirituality, someone open to exploring vulnerability, someone eager for a life transition, someone looking to live more authentically and unapologetically. Are you ready to embrace life with the same urgency and intention as you would embrace your final year? This isn't just about facing your ending. It's about getting a new perspective on life in all of its vibrant strokes and hues. It's about shedding what no longer serves you until what truly matters reveals itself. You know, a lot of this process is really letting go of things. I'm not going to help give you anything new you haven't had. I'm just going to help you release all the bullshit covering the gold, you know? So, if you're ready to commit to a transformative year, to embrace your mortality like a long-lost friend and allow it to guide you to a more authentic, peaceful, purpose-driven life, I would love for you to join us. How long is the course? As I said earlier, this program begins on February 5th, 5:30 p.m. PST, and runs for 13 months. This is Wednesday, February 5th, 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. With each call on the first Wednesday of each month, each call will be 90 minutes. The final call will be in February 2026. What kind of commitment will be expected? As I said, each month we'll meet for 90 minutes. First Wednesday of the month, and it will begin with some insights, some reflections, or a poem by me to open it. The focus for the first month will be reading the entire book. It's smaller than the average book, though it does pack a punch. It is 168 pages broken up into 39 chapters. It is expected that some parts might be too heavy to read at the beginning of the study group, or to read the whole thing in the first month. It took me a few months to read it. But this is okay if you can't. Simply notice this and note that chapter for when it comes up later again. Certain chapters will be reviewed in different months of the program. Will there be homework? Short answer, yes. Long answer, yes, but it's not mandatory. Obviously, there's no certificates or anything like that. But each month you'll be assigned some reflective activities, including meditations, journal prompts, contemplations, all to deepen your understanding and the integration of themes. There will also be a section focused on important end-of-life documents. If you feel comfortable addressing them, though nothing assigned will be mandatory, like I said. Every experience, including resistance or simply honoring another more urgent desire with your time, is not only valid, but very encouraged. And when I took this class, I rarely did the assigned monthly reading or the monthly assigned chapters. For the one I took, they broke up the chapters a few months, but I think it's better if we read it all in the beginning. But I rarely did the assigned meditations, but I did honor my own process every day. And that gave me an incredible experience. And honestly, the biggest thing that I did is what I said earlier. Just the question before every decision. You know, if I wanted to go out of town, it's like, hey, I'm dying on March 7th, 2024. When that day comes, am I going to regret not doing this? Or am I going to regret doing it? And so just kind of starting from the end to look at the beginning, however you want to word that. But for the end-of-life documents, I am not providing legal advice or counsel. Any assistance or resources I provide are solely for informational purposes. Consult with a qualified attorney or legal professional when making any decisions regarding planning or legal documents. How serious do I need to take this experiment? You don't have to take it like I did. But the level of seriousness you apply to this year is entirely up to you. When I took the course, my teacher mentioned that in 9 years of teaching the material, no one had ever taken it as seriously as I did. I was crying in half the classes, just coming up with new insights and realizations and things like, oh, I'm probably not going to talk to that person again. I'm not going to see this person again. So again, you don't have to approach it the same way I did. I approached it with such intensity because I knew I wanted to continue doing this work. And like I said, I wanted to be able to relate somehow to clients I would be working with in the future. This isn't about rigidity. That was something I had to let go of. I had to know the answer. I had to follow the certain instructions to the T. It's not about rigidity. It's about creating a space where you can explore your mortality and humanity at your own pace and integrate the lessons in a way that makes sense for you. And the funny thing about integrating, what I've learned in the last few years, and at least maybe this view might change, but integrating is when you do nothing. Integrating is like, you're not always thinking about it. It's like you're letting, in my experience, integration is where you let the subconscious do the work. Like you focus intently, you feel intently at times that you need to. But when you digest new material and new experiences, you integrate them by not doing anything about it, by just letting it sit and being patient and being present. I think from my experience, that's what the integration process is like. But you might have your own, and that's perfect. So the more you engage with the material, reflections, and contemplations, the more transformative your experience will be, but there is no right way to approach it. This is a journey, not a test. Whether you engage with it lightheartedly or with deep daily contemplation, your experience will be meaningful in its own way. Remember, we all live uniquely, and our experience of dying will reflect that too. The way we honor death is the way we honor the present moment. Before we die, all we'll have is a moment just like this one. How are you showing up in the moment to moment of your life? How might I feel after completing a year to live? Well, think of this. What might change for you if you fully embraced each moment or each day, each morning, each evening, each sunrise, each sunset, as though it might be your last? There's only one way to find out. Common side benefits include, but are not limited to nor guaranteed, a greater sense of clarity and purpose, increased clarity for difficult decisions, increased emotional resilience, a renewed sense of urgency and presence in your life, profound inner peace, a deeper connection with loved ones, increased capacity for compassion and empathy, increased capacity for polarity and complexity, increased empowerment, confidence, and authenticity, more joy, more love. I hope. At least that's my intention. But honor your own journey and what comes up. Again, I know that might be annoying, but that's the name of the game. What's coming up at every moment. And then you'll see how much of our fear of death is really behind the scenes of every thought in our life. So what is the curriculum? Outside of the book, I've broken down the curriculum into quarters, largely based on my own reflections of taking the class myself. Each quarter will transition us into the next stage of living consciously with our mortality. The flow will be as follows. Quarter 1, this will be February to April, February, March, April. This quarter, we're dealing with fear. We'll be going over death, loss, and grief. And in this first quarter, we set a gentle intention around difficult topics to explore the fear behind our fears, the ones that keep us from living fully. Again, these fears behind the fears are death, loss, and grief. This invitation prepares us to face the ultimate unknown with an open, unfettered heart in the coming months. You know, you'll notice what the magic of this is, I think, is once you can, it's hard to do it at first because it's so scary and we're not conditioned to. But once you can start making a little bit of space and peace with the unknown, you know, death is just the ultimate unknown. We fear all unknowns. We fear changing jobs. We fear moving. We fear changing friends. We fear new relationships. All of those are degrees and forms of unknowns. And the reason why sitting with death is powerful is because it's the ultimate unknown. And so the more we can be comfortable with these mini unknowns, the more space we have for the big ones. And when you have space for big unknowns, you understand you're not in control. And when you understand you're not in control, you have a new perspective on life. Anyways, that's my soapbox. Quarter 2, fulfillment. I guess this whole thing is my soapbox. Okay, so quarter 2 is fulfillment. This is May, June, and July, and we'll be going over desire, review, and intentions. And in this quarter, we focus on what truly matters, developing a sense of purpose and making practical plans for living fully before our death date. Quarter 3 is a theme of acceptance. This will be August, September, and October. And the themes of each of these months is prepare, share, and heal. And all of this is on the link. I'm just reading from what I wrote. In this quarter, we sit more intentionally with death and dying, preparing essential end-of-life documents, and explore the opportunity for healing with those we love. And the last quarter is surrender. November, December, January. And these are life, death, rebirth. Finally, we sink deeper into the cyclical nature of our own life and death, acknowledging the parts of ourselves that need to be released while welcoming the rest of our lives. Will we meet in person for a closing out ceremony? That's up to be determined. Maybe we can do that on the 13th month, and that will be decided in group. Will focusing on my mortality increase my chances of dying? This is the common concern, and honestly, I worried about it myself when I started the course, so I don't blame you. Let me save you from a few months of anxiety that I experienced, so you don't have to. First and foremost, life and the universe respond to your intention. If your intention is to use the awareness of mortality to live more fully, then you're fine. You don't have to worry about death coming at you, specifically you or anything like that. What I learned throughout my year to live is by having a year, even though it's less time than like 80 years, there was a profound freedom in it because ultimately we're not guaranteed tomorrow. I'm not guaranteed next week. I'm not guaranteed next month. I'm not guaranteed next year. And so honestly, I don't know. If someone came to me and said, David, I can either guarantee you 1 full year to live, guaranteed you will have 365 days from today to be alive. Or we can go back to your original odds and you can die tomorrow. After this year to live, I think I would take the year. I think I would. Maybe you won't. I don't know. But just some perspective, some food for thought. And so, like I said earlier, do not worry. Thinking about your death will not invite it any more than thinking about sex will get someone pregnant. What you can expect, however, are insights and synchronicities unlike anything you've ever experienced. So, how do I sign up? To join this year of transformation, reach out to me directly or schedule a time to chat on my Calendly link, on my booking link. This is all in the podcast show notes. Yeah, reach out to me. Let's schedule a call. Let's talk about this, see if it's a good fit. But I'm so excited about this. This has been on my heart so much, and there's no doubt that this is part of what I was born to do and bring here. So thank you for listening. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you on the other side. Ooh.